Welcome to Illuminating Hope, a podcast of Hope House. In this series, Advocating Justice, the Legal Battle, we dive into the legal battles that shape the fight for domestic violence survivors. In each episode, we bring you powerful conversations with the legal teams, court advocates, and change makers working tirelessly to bring justice, protection, and hope to survivors of domestic violence. From the courthouse to policy changes, from survivors' rights to legal strategies, we uncover the critical role the justice system plays in breaking cycles of abuse. Whether you are a survivor, advocate, or someone passionate about justice, this podcast series will empower and inform you. Justice isn't just about the law, it's about giving survivors a voice, protection, and a future. Court-appointed special advocate volunteers are community volunteers just like you who stand up and speak out to help children who have experienced abuse or neglect. Jackson County CASA recruits, trains, and supports these CASA volunteers to advocate for the best interest of children who are in the Jackson County family court system until they have a safe and permanent home. Jackson County children thrive when they have a consistent caring adult in their life to make sure their voices are heard. Discover how your support helps provide a CASA volunteer for children who have experienced abuse or neglect. Today's guests include Manager of Guardian at Litem, Sarah Ginther, and Manager of CASA Pro Bono Attorney Program, Tiana Griffin. Tiana and Sarah, welcome to the Illuminating Hope podcast. We're glad you're here.
Thank you for having us.
Talk to me about what CASA is and how Hope House helps the training of the CASA volunteers.
CASA is a national not-for-profit that recruits and trains volunteers to help with essentially guardian ad litem work, representing children who are involved in the foster care system due to allegations of child abuse or neglect. We train the volunteers, we put them through intensive training to assist guardian ad litems with that representation. So that can look like having them go out and meet with the child, having them attend meetings, having them do research into the child's life, talking to teachers, doctors, anybody that's important to the child or has information, just anything that will help our guardian ad litems advocate for kids in court is what we utilize our volunteers for. The intersection there with Hope House and your assistance with training for our volunteers is to educate them on issues of domestic violence, especially issues of domestic violence and how it comes into contact with the child welfare system sometimes, because that's a difficult area. I find it to be a really difficult area still after having done this for a while and worked with Hope House in the past, helping them just to educate them on domestic violence, to educate them on resources and services for our families, and give them a different mindset for when they're encountering issues in cases that involve both domestic violence and then child abuse or neglect.
Talk to me about your roles in CASA. Tiana, what do you do?
So I am a program manager at CASA. I work in our pro bono program, so very similar to what Sarah just described with the traditional volunteers, except we recruit and train various attorneys in the community to take on a case as a guardian ad litem. So they're kind of like a 2-for-1 special, if that makes sense. So they act as both the volunteer and the guardian ad litem for the child. I'm kind of more in like a consulting position, I would say. A lot of the attorneys that we work with have never worked in child welfare or family law, and as we all know, family law is a beast and very different compared to criminal, civil, all these other types of law. So it's a great way for them to give back to the community and to also kind of explore a different side of law. I have one volunteer attorney who started as a traditional volunteer at CASA first, loved it, decided to go to law school, and now she's a volunteer attorney with us and also practicing family law. So it's really cool to be able to work with people from different backgrounds and stuff like that. And then I'm also in charge of putting on continuing legal education or CLEs trainings throughout the year, just on various topics and whatnot.
And Sarah, tell me your role at CASA.
I am one of the managers of guardian ad litem there, which means I'm one of the 2 managing attorneys under our director of legal services, core legal services at Jackson County CASA. Currently, we're mixing things up a little bit, and I am doing casework, doing guardian ad litem work. We are in the process of transitioning from having the Office of the Guardian ad litem and Jackson County CASA. In Jackson County, we're transitioning to where it's just going to be Jackson County CASA, and then any conflicts we have will be represented by other members of the community. So the cases that are currently being served by the Office of the Guardian ad litem are transferring to CASA. So I'm currently working those cases to try to make that a smooth transition and try to keep up with those kids while we eventually will be able to match them with a volunteer.
Can you explain what is guardian ad litem work?
So a guardian ad litem is in Missouri and is an attorney that is appointed by the court to represent the best interest of a child in a case where there have been allegations of child abuse or neglect. So for Jackson County CASA, we serve the family court, the juvenile court, and so all of the incoming cases, all of the kids that would be coming in looking at potentially being in foster care or at least having court oversight due to allegations of abuse and neglect, all of those children that come through the system are appointed a guardian ad litem to advocate for them. So any attorney that does the guardian ad litem training, it's part of the CLE work that Tiana was talking about. So we will offer guardian ad litem COEs to other attorneys in their private practice, and they can pay for it or they can volunteer on a case and do the training for free. Any attorney can do guardian ad litem work, but at CASA, all of our staff, that is exclusively what we do, and it just involves advocating for children in all aspects of the judicial system, and then outside of that in any meetings or other opportunities that we would have to advocate for what we think is in their best interest, and then ultimately we make recommendations to the court, and the court makes the decisions as to what is in the child's best interest.
And guardian ad litem work is not just limited to children either. Sometimes the court will appoint guardians ad litem to represent some parents in the event that the parent might be suffering from some sort of mental health or might have an intellectual disability. The court feels like it's necessary to appoint them an attorney and a guardian ad litem. They'll do that as well.
As the guardian ad litem, you are appointed for the best interest of the children. So when you're identifying that there's domestic violence, one, the importance of identifying that there's domestic violence, and then the importance of making sure that that non-offending parent has resources like Hope House they're connected with, so that that would be a better outcome than somebody that doesn't have those connections with the resource and there is domestic violence.
I think that it's a really important question because I think historically we see where the value is. I think it goes back to some of the questions that we were talking about earlier in terms of what does Hope House bring to our training. I think having those supports in place educates the team, because when we're talking about non-offending parents in a situation where there's domestic violence, I think that the child welfare system gets that confused with failure to protect issues, and that's one of the more complicated issues that I see. And so having those supports from Hope House and having people educated in domestic violence and being able to educate the rest of the team, and also being able to give us other ideas, because I think with any system you're doing the same thing over and over again, and so having your therapists and advocates that are better versed in these areas than the rest of our team is going to be, that you're going to bring to the table other ways that we can serve the family to minimize trauma to the non-offending parent and to the children, and also help make the family whole. So I think that the absence of those resources causes the system to look at the non-offending parent more as another offending parent.
While we're on the subject of education, I know, Tiana, you talked about the CLEs that you set up. Is there a lot of domestic violence education based CLEs out there, or is that something that you guys have to search for? And I guess my question to Eileen would be, is Hope House considered a CLE for any of the guardian ad litems that may take our training?
I know we've done some CLEs in the past with people who have presented. It might not have been a CLE that was targeted for, trainings for domestic violence, but we've had presenters present in the past on that topic. It's actually one of themed CLEs that I would like to do in the future as well. I have that in my back pocket too. It's a hard topic, but I enjoy being able to have that type of training as well. And on top of our attorneys participating in those CLEs, we have a lot of community partners. Some therapists will participate, children's divisions caseworkers, which I think that that's also really important for them to participate in. A lot of times, children's vision has a lot of turnover, and so sometimes they might not be well versed on domestic violence or how to handle it. And I feel like the biggest issue is with our teens and their significant others. Trying to be able to navigate that is very difficult.
And I want to say, just is kind of a shout out to Tiana. That is one of the things that I see us doing now that you're in this position is a more targeted deep dive into issues when it comes to our CLEs versus a broad collection of different issues that guardian ad litems can experience. I appreciate that, and I think that that idea that you have to do a more focused on domestic violence is a very timely and a good idea. There are certainly CLEs out there. There's an annual one for sure, but I do think getting into those deeper issues and having people that are regularly working with survivors of domestic violence come in and talk about more of the minute things that you're going to run into every day versus the global, this is domestic violence and this is the cycle of abuse, or
for sure
that's going to be more significant for us and our representation.
Yeah, that's kind of like the boots on the ground, the ones that are kind of the overview is good. It's a welcome, but the next step of like, okay, this is really what it looks like when you're working with somebody right in front of you. Did you say that your CLEs, so the Children's Division also can come and be a part of those?
Yes.
Like they can come and sit and and hear?
Yes.
I love that kind of working together because I always find it's very helpful for people from different job sources to be hearing the same thing. Because
So
sometimes
important.
I found that, right, in working like over the years in the systems with law enforcement and prosecutors and Children's Division, like, no, that's not what they said in my training. No, we're all in the same training. We all could hear the same work.
Right.
And that kind of is a different way of, I think, for everybody to hear that because you have to look at it in a different lens.
Right.
So I'd love that you guys include that.
Yeah,
Yes.
because at the end of the day, we're all here for the same goal.
Right.
We want to reunify families if we can. There's no, where this agency is better, superior, or things like that. We all have the same end goal, and so it makes sense for us to all be on the same page and to be able to hopefully work together well as a team, and not saying that we don't always do that. We're all here for the best interests of the children. I mean, not just guardians ad litem, but caseworkers, parents, attorneys, everybody on the team. We're all here for this family, so.
Yeah, I think that that's great because I feel like over the years, I'm going back to talking about the failure to protect was kind of a big thing there for a while. But thinking that children's systems and adult systems to protect each other were just that, just for the kids and just for the adults. So they couldn't work together, right? It was, if you supported in this system, then you obviously don't like children. Or if you supported in this system, you obviously are not for victims of domestic violence. So it's like, okay, no, let's change those silos and change that narrative because we know that in order to make a successful, right, you said reunification of a family, we need to really know what's going on and work together. So I love that included them and as part of that, and that helps open those communications. So
I agree. I think it's a beautiful thing when organizations and all different kind of resources come together. We do that with our youth program. We have a robust youth program now, but we didn't reinvent the wheel. There are youth programs out there doing great things. We are a resource to them and go out to their programs and teach youth. I think it's a fantastic thing when great nonprofits and other systems work together. But going back to CASA and CASA volunteers, what do you think are some of the biggest challenges some of your volunteers face?
I think exposure is a big one.
Do you think there's a lot of first-time exposure for some of your volunteers to the systems?
Sure. I mean, and even if it's not a first-time exposure, I mean, they're certainly going to get a more in-depth exposure than they've had before. And that can be difficult, and that can be difficult to process. And like you see in the world of domestic violence, we see it in the world of child welfare. Like, it's not an uncommon response for someone to see what we do and just be like, okay, somebody has to step in and protect these children. Somebody has to step in and do something. I feel like when you're first exposed to that more in-depth understanding of what it looks like, that the knee-jerk reaction is to remove and to pull. Like, we operate out of fear sometimes. Like, we can't control the circumstances, but we can certainly control whether or not that child lives there, so child's out. Whereas the goal is to manage our own responses and deal with the facts that we have and assess the risks and certainly make sure that there's safety, but not add in additional unnecessary trauma if we can avoid it. That's the kicker. It might be more uncomfortable for me, but if I can manage myself and what I think and be receptive to information from people who are more well-versed in things than I am, and I understand, okay, this situation is not ideal, but the trauma that we cause by removing the child from the situation is going to be worse than trying to manage the the issues in the home, I would think, just as somebody who has experienced it, right? I was new at one point too, that that's the hardest thing, is trying to manage that and trying to get to the point where you can appreciate the balance and the nuance. Understand that when you can make it happen, leaving children in their biological families, returning children to their biological families, that's what's in their best interest, and that's what causes the least amount of trauma. And then navigating those other things. Well, we saw mom do this. Okay, well, trying to see that from a different perspective. So I think just that exposure and that new proximity to the issues are probably the biggest challenges. I don't know, they might say time.
Tack on to that, I would say time probably as well. You know, at one point, Sarah and I were both working in family treatment court, and that's a program that can move pretty quickly towards reunification. And sometimes our volunteers are not ready for that. They might think that they need more time. And then now we're like, okay, how long is enough time? If this parent has done everything that they possibly could do, it's not like we're going to just send the children home and then we're going to fall off the face of the earth. There's still going to be a monitoring period after that as well. But then another issue, I think, which goes back to what Sarah was saying too, everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. Unfortunately, you know, when our clients come into this situation or parents lose their children, it's unfortunate. It's really sad. Again, nobody's perfect. Everybody makes mistakes, and this system is supposed to be designed to help families get it together, to be able to stay together or to reunify together as quickly and as safely as possible. So I think that another one of the issues that we run into with our volunteers is just getting into them in that mindset that, like, okay, for example, this parent might suffer from substance use disorder, and yes, they may have used substances in the past that got their children removed, but now they're sober and they're going to be living a life of recovery. They made a mistake, they rectified the issues, and so we shouldn't punish them for life and, you know, keep their children hostage basically, because at some point the children have to go back home. If we can get them back home, families deserve to be together, and that's what we're here for.
When you're talking about mistakes, like, people make mistakes and then they get their kids back, and there's still people, they continue to make mistakes. Balancing that and understanding that to use substance abuse, but you could use it for any issue that brings a child to the juvenile court, is a lot of what I think we're trying to do, is teach people how to manage the issues that they have going on in their lives. So if you take substance abuse, for example, an easy one, because we know that relapse is part of recovery and that there's going to be a possibility that in the future relapse will happen, and it can happen while we're still involved. And it's a question of, do they have the tools to figure out where they go from here so that it doesn't get to a point where we're involved again. So I think that that can be a difficult thing, because when you're talking about that, when a parent has regained custody and they've done all the work and they've gotten back and then they've made another similar mistake, again, the knee-jerk reaction can be to pull the kid, cause more trauma, whereas you hopefully are in a situation where you can work within the home to see if the family has learned from the resources that they've received and have the ability to regroup with supports in place without having to start from the beginning again.
But I would think that the other part that is a difficult road is that the tools, those resources aren't always there. And as we're seeing different funding sources disappear in our community, as we struggle to continue to keep many, nonprofit doors open, we expect families to achieve, but there's not a lot of supports or tools or resources for them to do that.
That can also depend on what area you live in and what access just to information that you have. So that is a problem. I'm anticipating it may become a worse problem. And I think that when we look at it from our position, where we are professionals in a system where we're making recommendations about resources, and there's a lot of times where we're like, who addresses this?
Right.
How do we get that addressed? Who can we ask for help here? So to expect a family to be able to do that when, with the experience that we all have working in different systems, and to still sometimes come up and just be like, I'm not sure, we're gonna have to figure this one out, with a bunch of heads at the table.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Working in domestic violence, my why is because I'm a domestic violence survivor, but I also have boundaries. I know that I should not be working front lines with survivors themselves. So I work with a very loud voice out in our community in prevention work. Do you find that a lot of your volunteers came from the foster system? And if so, what kind of boundaries do you see your volunteers put into place so that they are not re-traumatized?
I think Tiana's going to correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not aware that we have a large population of volunteers that have lived experience. I don't think that we do. I think we would like to have more. That would be an amazing resource for any of our kids, but I don't think that we have a lot. certainly our volunteers come from all walks of life, and we do have some volunteers that have lived experience for sure. I think it would be challenging to be a volunteer and have the kind of boundaries that you would need to have to not experience any kind of secondary trauma or be re-traumatized by your own experiences. I think that you would just have to have the supports in place, and we all know from doing work in which people are harmed, right? You have a lot of supports just in your own coworkers and agencies, and we certainly try to provide that support for our volunteers. There's a lot of processing and dealing with things, and certainly our staff would always be available. Don't know if you have a different answer, but I don't know that it would be easy to avoid. Maybe just the type of case that you would be on, right? Like we try to match our volunteers with cases that would be best for them and for the youth, because we want it to be a positive experience for both. So that would probably be our biggest tool in terms of just keeping the trauma at bay as best as we can.
I was going to say the same thing basically. We're very open with our volunteers. I always want somebody to tell me, not necessarily, they don't have to share their story, that's not what I mean, if they don't want to, but I want them to feel comfortable enough to say, hey, I'm not comfortable with this case because of like XYZ, and maybe due to something that happened in their past, which is totally fine, and we can easily shift gears and take them off a case and get them a different case that they're more comfortable with. Not to say that, you know, those issues won't arise in the next case or like in the middle of a case or anything like that, but we're very open and very sensitive to our volunteers because, like Sarah said, we don't want anybody to have secondary trauma. This field is hard. It's not easy, and, you know, a lot of times people are just like, they see movies or TV or like whatever, and it's just like, that's real life. Like that stuff actually happens in today's age and in the past and will continue to happen. We do try really hard, and I hope we are doing a good job of protecting our volunteers and also protecting ourselves at the same time.
Lived experience is great, but I don't think you have to have lived experience to be a good person and to give back to your community. So why would someone want to work with CASA? What's the why?
The staff. I love being at CASA, so I may be the worst person to ask this. Kids are amazing, and these are kids. And they're funny, and they're strong-willed, and they're all the things. And it's very rewarding to work with them. It's very rewarding to be a part of helping a family that's figuring it out. I don't know how to put that into words, but I imagine that we've all experienced that in some fashion. You know, there's not really a limit to what I won't do or give or effort that I won't put into something if the family is doing all the work, and it's just a matter of they need X, Y, and Z set in court, or they need these resources or what, but like they're already doing it. And to know that you were able to provide any level of assistance and that they're all going to sleep under the same roof tonight, I mean, that's a really amazing thing. I'm going to go back to the staff because we're all pretty cool, for sure. But I mean, the work is just it's really valuable and it's rewarding. And it's something that I feel like if the entire community had a good appreciation for what is happening to families and what they can accomplish, that everybody would want to do it. These are the things that we want. We want children to be raised in their families. We want children to be safe. We want families to be safe. We want everybody to have the resources that they need, in theory. That's what we want for everybody, right? And if you could be a part of that and could help someone build that for themselves, why wouldn't you?
I love the heart behind what you were saying, Tiana, the example of somebody maybe using substance abuse. I like that you're so curious and wondering what's really going on with this person, or what's the underlying thing going on with this person. And I think if the society had such curiosity, we'd be in a better place. Absolutely. As a whole.
Yeah, this field is hard. I don't think anybody necessarily wants to work in this field. I wish this field didn't have to exist. But, you know, it exists for a reason, and I think a lot of our volunteers, like Sarah said, they want to give back to the community in some way. This is one of the harder ways to give back to the community, for sure. We have amazing volunteers who truly have a heart for helping children in whatever capacity that they need to be, whether that's, you know, donating certain items or helping a child navigate through being out of their home for an undetermined amount of time. Like Sarah said, it's very rewarding. Don't get us wrong, there are very hard days, and there are days where I'm like, I can't do this anymore. It can be very rewarding. It can make you feel good. I think the biggest thing, I agree with Sarah, is just the kids. I've met a lot of really cool kids. They're funny. They're hilarious. And again, on the flip side, there are really tough times where we have to have really tough conversations, and they might not listen to me, or they might be like, and then do the complete opposite of what we just talked about. But, I have to remind myself that they're children. I was once a child. I was once like things go in one ear and out the other, and probably still happens to this day, if I'm being honest. But there are really good days where it's just like, yeah, this is worth it.
And interacting with your parents and being able to walk in and introduce yourself and be like, I met your child the other day. They were awesome. They were hilarious. They were, and to get that response from them and be able to connect with them just on how cool their kid is, and, let them know I'm going to be representing your child. The easiest way for us to be able to do this is to be able to have a connection with you as well. Let's get you an attorney. Let's sit down and talk, figure out what is best for your kid.
It's also rewarding to be able to have that connection with parents too, and to be able to develop a relationship, because going into this field, I was under the impression that just working with children and XYZ and trying to get them back as home as quickly as possible. But I've made some really good connections with parents along the way too, to the point where, I still have a couple of parents who text me every holiday and will send me something over Christmas, which is totally unnecessary, but they'll do it anyways, and they'll keep me updated on how their kids are doing and how they're doing personally too. So that also makes me feel good too.
It is kind of funny how I perceive, and maybe just based off my own start when I was young, like you think you're going to be working with children in a vacuum. I'm going to represent this child. I'm going to advocate for this child. And then you're like, oh, well, that's not how this works. This child is very connected to this family and this parent. And if I'm going to be advocating for this child, I'm going to need to know a lot more about everyone else.
Yeah.
And recognize their importance to the child.
And sometimes we catch ourselves advocating for parents too, because it's in the best interest of their child.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
How can someone from the community get involved with CASA, and what's one of CASA's biggest needs right now?
Volunteers, especially with our office taking over majority of the cases in Jackson County. We really need volunteers to be able to help us continue to do the work that we're doing, and to also help our clients, our kids. Our CASA stands for, every child having an advocate for them, and that's what we need, is people who are willing to step up and be an advocate for these kids. Try to be a safe person in their life. Try to be a constant person. As we all know, caseworkers come and go, and teams are constantly changing. Our hope is that the CASA Volunteer will continue to be in that child's life until the case releases, if the child so chooses to, after a case releases, to continue to maintain contact with them. So I would say that's our biggest need is volunteers. If anybody who's listening to this wants to learn more about becoming a CASA volunteer, they can head to our website.
Tiana and Sarah, I can't thank you enough for coming on today and giving us so much more information about CASA and what you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's do this.